She thought she could rewrite the story without me. She didn't expect me to finish it. Like, comment, and subscribe for more gripping real-life stories of betrayal, fallout, and recovery told without filters or fear. I met Elena in the most unassuming way, at a local bookstore that neither of us had any business being in. I was there to pick up a gift for my sister, a cookbook she'd been hinting at for weeks. Elena, on the other hand, was curled into one of the plush chairs in the back, thumbing through a copy of The Great Gatsby, her hair tucked behind one ear, absent-mindedly sipping from a cup of coffee. I remember thinking how at peace she looked, completely absorbed, and how rare that kind of presence was in a world that never stops moving. Our conversation started over a clumsy apology, mine. I had knocked over a display trying to maneuver around a narrow aisle. She laughed. It was this open, real laugh, the kind that seems to come from someone who doesn't force joy. We talked for a few minutes, about the book, the weather, our mutual disdain for how hard it was to find a good pen these days. By the time we left, I had her number and a reluctant smile on my face I didn't want to admit had stayed with me the whole drive home. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. She said yes before I even finished the question. We married in a small ceremony in her hometown, just 30 guests, no spectacle. I remember the sunlight that afternoon, how it made her dress glow like it had a heartbeat of its own. Our vows were handwritten, hers more poetic than mine. I still keep them tucked into a drawer in my nightstand. Every now and then I reread them, not because I doubt her sincerity from back then, but because I like to remember what it felt like to love with that kind of clarity. We built a quiet life together. Elena worked in interior design, mostly residential spaces, and I ran a small logistics company that had been in my family since my grandfather's time. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well and gave us enough breathing room to enjoy our weekends, travel occasionally, and eat out when we didn't feel like cooking. We didn't have kids, by choice. It was a decision we made early, and we never wavered on it. Our home became our shared project instead. Every wall, every piece of furniture, every worn book on the shelf had a memory attached. Our days had a rhythm to them. Morning coffee together on the patio, evening walks through the neighborhood, quiet Sunday afternoons spent reading or watching old movies. It wasn't the kind of life that makes headlines, but it was ours, and we were content. I think we both took a lot of pride in the fact that even after all these years, we still laughed together. We still reached for each other's hand in the middle of the night. There was a comfort in the ordinary, a sense that we had made something good from all the small decisions we'd strung together over time. I wouldn't have changed a thing. If someone had told me 5 years ago that we'd be living in a house like ours now, I would have laughed them off. Not because I didn't believe in us, but because we weren't the kind of couple that chased flashy things. We were planners, steady, intentional. But life, when treated with care, sometimes opens doors you never thought to knock on. After nearly a decade of pouring ourselves into work, saving wisely, and saying no more than yes to the fleeting pleasures of excess, Elena and I found ourselves with a bit of a surplus. Nothing outrageous, just enough to start looking at a future that felt more expansive. We bought a plot just outside the city, about 25 minutes from downtown. It had trees that looked like they'd been standing long before us and would still be standing long after we were gone. Elena said it felt like the kind of place where silence could stretch out and make a home. We hired a modest but passionate architect, someone who listened more than he spoke. Elena took the lead on the design, naturally, her eye for light and texture was something else. I mostly stayed out of the way, offering input on things like garage space, water pressure, and what kind of grill we should buy. By the time the house was finished, it wasn't just a place, it was a statement. Not of wealth, but of intention. Every corner reflected something about us, a reading nook for her, a sunlit office for me, and a kitchen where we cooked side by side most evenings, dancing around each other with an ease that only years of practice could bring. Professionally, things were thriving. My company, once small and cautious, expanded into a regional operation. I traveled more than I used to, but I always made it a point to be home for the important things, birthdays, anniversaries, our weekend rituals. Elena's business took off as well. She picked up high-profile clients, referrals started pouring in, and soon she had a team working under her. I was proud of her, not just for the success, but for the grace with which she handled it. She never lost the warmth, the ability to talk to anyone, the way she remembered small details about people that made them feel seen. Our social circle grew, too. Dinner parties at our place became a thing, especially in the spring when the back patio came alive with string lights and the smell of fresh herbs from Elena's garden. Friends often commented on how in sync we seemed, how we made marriage look easy. And in many ways, it was. We had disagreements, sure, over the thermostat, over which series to binge next, but there was never malice, never real distance. At least, none that lingered long. Even the mundane felt meaningful. We shared chores, split grocery runs, and had a running competition on who could make the better cup of coffee. I still claim victory, though she insists her oat milk frothing skills are superior. It was a good life. Solid. Built on trust, laughter, and years of showing up for each other. Looking back, I see that we had everything we wanted. Everything we worked for. By the time our third wedding anniversary rolled around, Elena had turned our home into something of a local marvel. Friends and acquaintances often joked that she should be featured in a magazine. Every inch of our space bore her signature, natural tones, subtle textures, elegant minimalism without a trace of sterility. She had a way of balancing warmth with modernity, and our home felt alive, welcoming, layered, yet always orderly. We hosted often. It wasn't unusual for our weekends to start with a quiet brunch on the patio and end with wine glasses clinking over candlelight with friends gathered around our dining table. Elena moved effortlessly among guests, pouring drinks, sharing stories, laughing. She had a presence that pulled people in. It made entertaining feel easy. My work, meanwhile, had shifted into a more strategic phase. I no longer managed the day-to-day operations myself, but I remained deeply involved. I had hired well, trained my team to uphold our standards, and allowed myself to step back just enough to enjoy the fruits of our labor. That meant shorter hours, more time at home, and the occasional weekday lunch with Elena, when our schedules allowed. Elena's design studio expanded into its own downtown space. She found a converted loft with exposed brick and enormous windows that flooded the room with light. It became a creative haven for her and her small team. She worked long hours some days, pouring herself into each project, but she never brought stress home. If anything, success only made her more energized, more present when we were together. We took 2 trips that year. The first was to Lisbon, a place Elena had always wanted to see. We rented a tiny apartment in the Alfama district and spent our days walking the hills, sampling local pastries, and listening to fado music late into the evenings. She photographed every detail, tile patterns, sunlit courtyards, worn alleyways. The second trip was more relaxed, a week in the mountains with no agenda beyond reading, hiking, and sleeping in. Elena brought along a sketchbook and would sit quietly near the fireplace most mornings, drawing ideas that came to her from the forest just beyond our window. When we returned, the rhythm of our life settled back in naturally. I resumed my early morning runs, and she picked up several new clients. We made time for each other during the week, shared cooking, movie nights, small errands we didn't mind doing together. Saturday mornings were our favorite: coffee in bed, a shared crossword, and a playlist we curated over time that always seemed to start with the same song. Our families remained close. Her parents visited a few times a year and stayed in the guest suite, which Elena had designed with the same care as the rest of the house. My younger sister brought her kids over regularly. They adored Elena. She baked with them, taught them how to fold napkins into animals, and let them help in the garden. Evenings were quiet. We had everything we needed. Books, warmth, the soft hum of a house that had become part of us. We didn't seek anything beyond our world because there was comfort in the life we had crafted, steady, full, and familiar. Elena and I had always been good with routine. Not in the sense that things felt predictable, but more that we appreciated the structure that allowed life to breathe in between. Our days rarely felt repetitive. There was variety in the work we did, in the people we encountered, and in the quiet ways we supported each other through the inevitable demands of life. By the time we reached our 7th anniversary, we had both grown in our own directions, yet without growing apart. She had built a reputation for her design work beyond our city limits, clients were starting to fly her out for consultations, and she was being invited to speak at industry panels and workshops. I attended one of her talks once, just to see her in that element, to see her command a room with the same calm clarity she brought to our living room every night. She was impressive, not just in the quality of her work, but in how she carried herself through it all. My own business had entered a phase where succession planning became a topic of discussion. I began mentoring 2 younger partners who had the energy and drive I remembered from my own earlier years. It felt natural, even gratifying, to pass along the hard-earned lessons and see them applied with fresh vision. I started thinking more about legacy, not just financial, but the kind built from years of consistency, respect, and quiet ambition. At home, our rhythms continued. Elena insisted on having fresh flowers in the entryway, always something in season. I teased her about it at first, but I'd grown to like the way it made the house feel when you walked in. Her attention to detail didn't stop at work. She infused the same care into our meals, our holidays, even the way the linen closet was organized. There was an elegance to the way she moved through the world, even in the smallest acts. We had our favorite spots, the neighborhood Italian place with the red checkered tablecloths, the lakeside cafe that served a coffee she swore was the only thing that could clear her morning fog. Weekends often involved small excursions, a drive to a market outside the city, a stroll through new art exhibits, the occasional matinee if something decent was playing. We weren't flashy, but we were present. Our communication had always been solid. We didn't shout. We rarely even raised our voices. When something came up, a disagreement, a scheduling conflict, one of us feeling stretched too thin, we addressed it without turning it into a performance. I think that was one of the things people around us noticed. We were comfortable not needing to win every argument. We'd rather resolve something and move on than prove a point. Even our silences felt mutual. We didn't fill every gap with chatter. Some evenings were spent in the same room, her sketching or reading, me reviewing reports or just enjoying the quiet. There was something deeply satisfying about sharing space without pressure. We each had our own gravity, and our lives orbited each other without collision. People would often say we made it look easy. And maybe, in some ways, it was. Built not on grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but on the everyday acts of showing up, listening, sharing, and choosing each other, again and again. It was sometime in early autumn that I first noticed a change, not abrupt, not jarring, just a shift in tone. Elena had taken on a new client, a commercial space downtown that required a more aggressive timeline than usual. She told me it was a challenge she welcomed, that she needed to stretch her design muscles. I believed her, of course. She had always thrived under pressure. The schedule started filling up. Evening meetings, weekend site visits, late-night sketching in her studio. At first, I thought nothing of it. We'd both had busy seasons before, and we respected each other's space when that happened. I picked up more of the groceries, started handling dinner on weeknights, nothing elaborate, just enough to keep us both fed and cared for. Her phone buzzed more often, but she never seemed flustered about it. Just distracted. Sometimes she would glance at it, type out a reply, and slip it back into her bag. If I asked who it was, she usually said it was the contractor or her assistant trying to sort out materials. And there was no reason to doubt that. I'd been around her work long enough to know how many moving parts were involved in these kinds of projects. What did stand out, though, was how quiet she'd become in the mornings. Elena used to hum while making coffee, sometimes talk to herself while reviewing emails, laugh at random texts from her sister. Lately, she was more focused, less chatty. She still kissed me goodbye, still asked about my day, but her attention felt like it was elsewhere, even when she was standing right in front of me. I chalked it up to stress. The kind that comes with creative ambition and the weight of reputation. I tried to be supportive without pressing. She had earned her success, and I wasn't going to be the kind of man who interpreted independence as distance. I told her to take the time she needed, offered to help with errands, even suggested we do a weekend away once the project wrapped. She smiled, touched my arm, and said that sounded perfect. Then she glanced at her watch and hurried out the door. The intimacy faded gradually. Not vanished, but cooled. Our evenings grew shorter. She'd work late at the studio or come home with her laptop and headphones in, zoned into architectural software or Zoom calls with her project team. When we did share meals, the conversation was more practical than personal: deadlines, vendors, budgeting for the next phase. I tried bringing up lighter things, old memories, ideas for the holidays, but they rarely caught hold. Her replies were kind but clipped, as if her mind was elsewhere even while she smiled at me. She started going to the gym again, early in the morning. That wasn't unusual, we'd both gone through health kicks over the years. But now she preferred going alone. Said she needed the headspace. I respected that. I didn't think twice about it. We'd always given each other freedom to recharge in our own ways. There was no single moment that stood out. Just a new rhythm taking shape, one that left less room for me in her day. I assumed it was temporary. A season. Something that would ease once her work calmed down. So I stayed steady. Supportive. Aware, but not alarmed. By late October, Elena's schedule had developed a kind of frictionless autonomy. She moved through her days with purpose, but rarely paused to share the details anymore. We used to exchange little updates: what she was working on, who I'd spoken to at the office, even mundane things like what we wanted to eat later. Those check-ins faded. I started waking up to find her already gone. There would be a note on the kitchen counter sometimes, scrawled in her delicate handwriting: early meeting. Didn't want to wake you. Love you. The notes were always short, always affectionate, and I'd fold them into my wallet without much thought. They were comforting in their familiarity, even if the woman who wrote them had become harder to reach. On the weekends, she began filling her time with site visits and last-minute errands. She often said she needed to drop by a vendor or meet with the contractor, and I took her word for it. It wasn't unusual for her to get absorbed in work. She was a perfectionist with clients, and I'd always admired her dedication. Still, I started noticing a pattern: her return times grew unpredictable. Sometimes she'd say she'd be back by 2 and wouldn't come in until nearly 6. Always with an explanation. Traffic. A client's indecision. A delay at the materials yard. I didn't press. I'd never been the interrogating type. If she needed space, I gave it. I figured she would settle back in once the pressure lifted. But the space between us began to feel like something more than just professional distraction. It wasn't hostile. It wasn't even cold. It was thin. Like a connection fraying slowly without anyone pulling at the ends. One evening, I came home with takeout from her favorite Thai place. I'd texted her earlier to say I was picking up dinner, and she'd replied with a thumbs-up emoji. When I walked in, the lights were dim, music was playing softly, and her laptop was open on the couch. But she wasn't there. Her gym bag was by the door, so I figured she'd stepped into the shower. I waited. 20 minutes passed. 30. I checked the bedroom: empty. The bathroom light was off. Her car was in the driveway. I called her cell. It rang, then went to voicemail. Eventually, she walked through the front door in fresh clothes, hair still damp. Sorry, she said breathlessly. I went back out. Forgot I needed to pick up some samples. Left my phone in the studio. She kissed me on the cheek and thanked me for dinner, then changed the subject quickly, asking about my day: how work had gone, if I'd talked to my sister lately. She still smiled, still listened, still touched my arm during conversations. Nothing overt had changed. But something in the timing, the silences between moments, felt altered. That week, she began sleeping on the edge of the bed more frequently, sometimes facing away. We'd always been a tangle of limbs at night, even in our sleep. Now there was space between us, literal and otherwise. I didn't say anything. I simply adjusted. This was the ebb and flow of long relationships, I told myself. Not everything could be effortless all the time. Sometimes you held the line until the other person found their way back. By November, our conversations had become transactional. We still spoke, of course, about things that needed to be handled, items to be picked up, bills to be paid, who would be home first. But the ease was gone. We hadn't argued. We hadn't clashed. But our days began to feel like they were orbiting separate centers. Elena's tone was softer than usual, almost neutral, as if she were constantly balancing politeness with detachment. She wasn't cold, exactly, more like she had emotionally stepped just slightly to the side of where she used to stand. It was in the way she avoided lingering in shared spaces, the way she began retreating to the studio after dinner rather than curling up on the couch beside me. I didn't see it as malicious. I figured she was tired. Maybe overwhelmed. Her big project still wasn't done, and she mentioned taking on 2 new clients, even though I had gently suggested she slow down. She'd given a vague smile and said, "I just need to finish what I started." Sleep became fragmented. She would get out of bed in the middle of the night, sometimes claiming she couldn't sleep, other times not offering a reason at all. I'd wake to the soft click of the bedroom door closing or the subtle rustle of her robe. In the mornings, I'd find her downstairs with a half-drunk cup of tea or already dressed in workout gear, tying her shoelaces, eyes fixed on the floor. Her gym visits increased, sometimes twice a day. When I asked her if she was training for something, she chuckled. "No, just trying to stay sane," she said. I didn't question it. People cope with stress in their own ways. And for Elena, movement had always been a form of escape. She also started being protective of her phone in a way she never used to be. Not obvious, just subtle shifts. She used to leave it lying on the counter or face up on the couch while she went about her day. Now it was always near her, always face down. When it buzzed, she'd glance at it quickly, sometimes turn her body slightly away as she responded. There were moments that didn't quite add up. One evening, she told me she had a client dinner, but when I called the restaurant to see if I could send over a bottle of wine to surprise her, the hostess said there was no reservation under her name. I didn't bring it up. I told myself it could have been booked under her client's name or changed last minute. I kept waiting for her to open up, to tell me what was bothering her, if anything. But she didn't. And the more I asked, the more evasive she became, not irritated, just distant. Like someone watching their life play out through a pane of glass. She stopped initiating affection. Not completely, but noticeably. A quick kiss, a distracted hug, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. When I told her I missed her, she pressed her lips together, nodded slowly, and said, "I know." Then she turned back to her laptop. I didn't push harder. I figured the best thing I could do was be patient. Give her time. Be steady. Whatever this was, I told myself, it would pass. That Tuesday started like any other. I had an afternoon meeting that was cancelled last minute. Nothing urgent. I figured I'd take the opportunity to come home early and surprise Elena. She'd been distant, yes, but I still believed we just needed time together, some small, unscripted moment to reconnect. I picked up a bottle of wine and stopped by the bakery she liked, thinking maybe we could have an early dinner together, maybe even talk. The driveway was empty when I pulled in. That didn't raise any flags. Elena had mentioned running errands that morning. I unlocked the front door, balancing the wine and the paper bag in one arm, expecting the house to be quiet. But as I stepped inside, I immediately noticed something off. The scent of cologne that didn't belong to me lingered faintly in the air, unfamiliar and sharp. The living room lights were on. Music was playing softly, instrumental, something jazzy. Elena usually reserved that playlist for evenings. Then I heard footsteps upstairs. Confident, steady. I placed the wine on the kitchen counter, my body moving before my mind had caught up. The voice that followed was male. I couldn't make out the words, just the tone, casual, relaxed, like someone speaking in their own space. Not a guest. Not a stranger. I walked toward the staircase just as a man appeared at the top landing. He was tall, athletic-looking, in a fitted t-shirt and gym shorts. He had a water bottle in one hand and a towel slung over his shoulder. When he saw me, he stopped mid-step. His expression shifted, not from guilt or surprise, but confusion. "Who the hell are you?" he asked. I was still on the bottom step. I stared at him, the words caught in my throat. It took me a few seconds to respond. "I live here." He blinked, visibly thrown. "Wait, what?" Before I could say anything else, Elena appeared behind him. She had a towel wrapped around her hair and was wearing a loose sweater I didn't recognize. Her face froze the moment she saw me. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. She stepped forward but didn't say my name. The man turned back to her, visibly irritated. "What is this?" he asked. "You said this place was yours." She started, then stopped. I looked at her. I didn't look at him again. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need any explanations. The air between us was suddenly electric with something too heavy to describe. "I think you should go," I said, quietly but firmly, still staring at her. He turned back to me. "Man, I don't know what game this is, but I'm not going anywhere until someone explains." "Get out," I said louder now, my voice no longer calm. "You don't live here. You don't belong here." Elena stepped between us, but I wasn't looking at her anymore. I didn't want to see the look on her face, didn't want to process the thousands of silent hours that had led to this single, stupid, undeniable moment. He hesitated, then scoffed, muttered something under his breath, and moved down the stairs, brushing past me without another word. I didn't stop him. I didn't touch him. I stood there for a long time, gripping the banister, listening to the front door open and close. Then I turned to her. "Elena," I said, my voice dry. "Start talking." I didn't give her time to speak. I didn't need to hear whatever version she was about to try and shape with her mouth half open and eyes darting like she was still searching for a way out. I walked past her, straight into the bedroom. His clothes were there, t-shirt, sneakers, a pair of socks still curled at the ends. It was like he'd unpacked a part of himself in my home. I gathered them all in one sweep and threw them down the stairs. "Get it all out!" I shouted. I stormed into the bathroom. His toothbrush. His cologne. A gym bag tucked into the linen cabinet. I grabbed it and hurled it toward the front door. Elena flinched when it hit the wall, but I didn't look at her. "Is this what you've been doing while I worked? While I made dinner, paid the bills, trusted you?" She opened her mouth, but I kept going. "You let him walk around here like he belonged. Like I didn't exist." "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," she whispered. I laughed, short, sharp, ugly. "Don't insult me." She stepped toward me, her voice shaking now. "Please, just let me explain." "No. I want you out. Now. Get your things. Every last piece of it. And leave. You don't get to stay here. Not tonight. Not again." Her face crumpled. She started crying, real tears, her voice breaking. "I made a mistake." "You made choices," I snapped. "Don't reduce it to a mistake. She followed me into the kitchen, still pleading. I ignored her, grabbed my phone, and started recording a video of her things strewn around, the pile at the door, the silence choking the room. "I'll make sure everyone knows," I said. "Friends, family, co-workers. You didn't just wreck our marriage. You did it shamelessly. Don't do this, please. I trusted you. And you threw it away. For him. A stranger. In my home. In our bed." I posted the photos and a short message to social media. Nothing elaborate. Just facts. I tagged no one, but I didn't need to. Word travels fast when it's ugly. My phone began vibrating non-stop within minutes. Calls from mutual friends, texts from her sister, even one from her boss asking what had happened. I ignored them all. Elena was on the floor in the hallway, her suitcase half-packed, sobbing into her knees. She kept repeating my name. I stood at the top of the stairs watching her like I didn't recognize the woman below me. "Go to your sister's," I said. "Or a hotel. I don't care. But if you're still here in an hour, I'll call the police." She looked up at me, makeup smeared, shaking. "I'm sorry. I'll do anything, please don't throw everything away like this." "I didn't," I said. "You did." And with that, I walked into the guest room and shut the door. I could hear her moving, slowly, like her body weighed more than it ever had, gathering things, zipping bags. At one point she paused by the door. I didn't look out. I heard it close. Silence followed. It wasn't peaceful. It was hollow. The first night alone in the house was unbearable. I didn't sleep. Not because I was overwhelmed with sadness or despair, but because everything around me felt contaminated. The sheets, the couch, the scent of her shampoo lingering in the hallway. I opened every window and let the cold night air move through the rooms. Still, it didn't feel clean. My phone lit up constantly through the night. Messages from friends, distant cousins, people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some sent shocked emojis, others asked for the full story. A few told me they'd had a feeling, which only made my stomach turn. I didn't reply to anyone. I didn't have the energy to explain, and I didn't want to hear apologies for a mess I hadn't created. By morning, the story had made its way through our entire social circle. One of her friends reached out asking me to take the post down. I didn't respond. Let them all talk. Let them see. She called 5 times. Left 2 voicemails. Her voice was hoarse, trembling, almost unrecognizable. She didn't beg for forgiveness, at least not in those messages. She just said she was sorry, that she'd lost control, that it wasn't serious, and that it had already ended. I deleted each message before it finished. Later that afternoon, her sister called me. She wanted to come by and collect a few more of Elena's things. I agreed, on the condition that Elena wouldn't come with her. Her sister showed up just after sunset, quiet and tight-lipped, offering no defense, no excuses. I helped her carry out 2 boxes. When she turned to thank me, I closed the door before she finished the sentence. That weekend, I started scrubbing the house. I took down every photo of us, every trace of the life we'd built. I boxed them and left them in the garage. I stripped the bed, tossed the sheets in a black trash bag, and took it straight to the curb. I even emptied her side of the bathroom cabinet, lotions, serums, hair ties, all of it. I wanted no reminders of her softness. Then I emailed my lawyer. There would be no mediation. No reconciliation. I had the right to file for divorce on grounds of adultery, and I made it clear I would. He asked for evidence. I sent him the photos I'd taken that day. He said they were enough. Elena texted me later that night. A long message, this time. She said she had made the biggest mistake of her life. That she couldn't breathe without me. That what happened meant nothing compared to what we had. That she was willing to do anything, therapy, separation, even moving out indefinitely, just to have a chance to fix it. I didn't reply. Instead, I blocked her number. Then I blocked her email. Then I sat in the guest room, the only space untouched by her, and I finally cried. Not just for the betrayal, but for the years. For all the small, quiet moments I thought had meant something. For the way she used to laugh at my worst jokes. For the home we built that was never real to her, not in the way it was to me. The next day, I changed the locks. And I didn't leave the porch light on. 2 weeks after I filed, the divorce papers were served. She didn't contest. Didn't try to delay it, didn't reach out again. I think she finally understood that whatever she thought might remain between us was gone. There wasn't anything left to salvage. The house, the marriage, the history, we both knew it was over. People continued to talk. Mutual friends tried to stay neutral, but I could feel the shift. Some stepped back quietly, unwilling to choose a side. Others leaned in awkwardly, sending messages that felt more like gossip disguised as concern. I ignored all of them. My focus was on getting through the paperwork, and then moving on. The rest could sort itself out. Elena moved in with her sister for a while. I heard that through a friend who still kept tabs on her. Then came the update that she'd quit the project she was working on and closed her design studio indefinitely. I didn't feel satisfaction hearing that. Just emptiness. Like watching someone's life fold into itself. I returned to work. Slowly at first, half days, short meetings, but eventually I found rhythm again. It was easier when I kept busy. The days didn't feel as jagged that way. I stopped using the bedroom. I slept in the guest room for months. I didn't even open the closet door on her side. Everything was still there, hangers, shoes, a scarf I'd bought her in Lisbon. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away, but I didn't want it near me either. The memories didn't vanish. They showed up in strange ways. A song in the grocery store. The smell of ginger when I passed the bakery she liked. I never tried to suppress them. I let them come, sit beside me for a moment, then leave. I learned not to fight it. I wasn't trying to forget her. I was just trying to stop reliving the part where it all fell apart. 3 months after she left, I sold the house. I didn't want to. But I couldn't breathe in it anymore. Every room echoed with something I didn't want to hear. I found a small place across the river, quieter, simpler. Fewer windows. Fewer memories. I never posted about the divorce again. Never updated anyone officially. I just let the silence fill the space she once occupied. Let people come to their own conclusions. Eventually, I started seeing a therapist. Not to talk about her, but to talk about me. About how to rebuild trust in myself. About how to live without needing answers to questions that would never be satisfying. She had made her choices. And I had made mine. One day, I found a letter in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name in her handwriting. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I walked to the fireplace, dropped it in, and watched it burn slowly until the paper curled into ash. There was no ceremony in that act. No drama. Just clarity. I had already read the only story that mattered. And I had reached the last page.